Hello there, dear friends, and welcome once again to the Relaxed Fantasy Review. Today, we're going to be talking about the penultimate spells in the game, 8th level spells, specifically the ones that the Druid gets. 8th level spells are a wonderful spot for a Druid because it's at this point in their career that they can actually cast their spells while wild-shaped, which is actually really awesome because they've only been able to concentrate on spells at this point in their wild shape, and now that's not a problem anymore. So their magic is not only more available to them than ever, but it's reaching levels of power that absolutely can change not just the battlefield, but the world itself. We haven't quite hit 9th level power yet, but we're almost there. So, what are the best Druid spells at this level? I've made my typical top 5, so let's talk about them. Starting with number 5, a very nature-themed spell, Control Weather. Takes 10 minutes to cast, and then it's an 8-hour concentration spell, during which time you can shift the weather. Takes about half an hour to shift it a notch in any direction. And there's a scale built into the spell where it talks about the wind, the rain, and the temperature. You can change any of these things one notch in roughly half an hour's time. There's a dice roll that determines it. 1d4 times 10 minutes. But you can go from clear skies to torrential downpour in about 2 hours. You can go from a warm day to an unbearably cold day or an unbearably hot day in just an hour. And you can go from having no wind to having gale force hurricane winds in about 2 hours. And you have to do them all sequentially, but you can turn the most peaceful and serene place into hell on earth in just a few hours' time with a 5-mile radius. That is a huge area, an entire city, an entire army camp, anything like that. And the idea that you could do this while wild-shaped is kind of crazy to me. But yeah, like you have a lot of power to just shift the entire landscape of the world around you. There's no explicit instructions that say how much damage this will do or what it'll do to the local ecology or anything like that. It's up to the dungeon master to decide. But if nothing else, it's a cool theme. And I can't imagine a dungeon master saying that, oh, this happens, and then 8 hours later everything's fine again. Not a chance. So yeah, powerful and thematic spell. Now, number 4 on this list is actually a direct damaging spell. It's a super radiant fireball, Sunburst. Fireball is the measure by which we talk about spells' power when it comes to AoEs. Fireball does 8d6 damage at level 3. If you upcast it to level 7, it can do 12d6. Well, Sunburst does 12d6, and as an 8th level spell, that's reasonably comparable, but it's radiant damage, which is better than fire. But it takes a constitution saving throw, which is worse than the dexterity one. But it also has a couple other things going for it. It has a much bigger space. Instead of a 20-foot radius, it's a 60-foot radius, so it's gigantic. And it's radiant damage, like I mentioned earlier, and it gets rid of all magical darkness, just dispelling all of it, and creatures who fail their con save are blinded. So it's just a basic sunburst. And it does good damage, and yeah, it's just a really, really cool spell to use if you just have to explode an area. It's just the big brother fireball that, has a couple quirks. But let's say you don't want to do damage in a 60-foot radius. Let's say you want to take out an entire swath of land. Enter my 3rd pick for this list, Tsunami. And yes, Druids are the only ones who can learn this spell. And yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a tidal wave. It takes a minute to cast the spell, during which time you can raise up a wall of water that is 300 feet high, 300 feet wide, and 50 feet thick. You summon this water out of nothing, it just manifests. And then once the wall has been built over the minute, you send it away from you over a period of 6 rounds. Each round any huge or smaller creature gets swept away by the wave, just pushed. It travels 50 feet every round. It does bludgeoning damage every round. 5d10 to start, and then 1d10 less every round thereafter. Creatures have to make strength saves just to swim, otherwise they're just swept away in the wave. And assuming they can manage to get out of the wall, either sideways or straight through it, they just fall to the ground. But that takes a strength save against your spell save DC. And yeah, this just goes for the entire 300 feet, crashing the wall of water and pushing enemies away from you unless they're gargantuan sized. This is absolutely an army killer. It's also a wonderful way to take a boss monster and just push them away from you. And again, the strength save does not get them out of the wave. It allows them to swim. If they don't have a swim speed, they still have to swim through the water, which could take more than one turn to succeed on. So yeah, it's a tricky one for sure. And the damage is not unbelievably high, but 5d10 is nothing to scoff at, and it just keeps going, although the dice drop every turn. So yeah, it's a great way to really make a statement, to send a tsunami at someone. Number 2 on this list is the spell Feeble Mind. Feeble Mind is an incredibly simple spell. You point at a creature, they take 46 psychic damage, and make an intelligence saving throw. If they fail the save, their intelligence and charisma scores drop to 1, which means they have no intelligence and no charisma. They cannot cast spells, cannot use items, they cannot speak, they cannot understand speech. They basically become no more intelligent than a slime. All they can do is recognize their allies and follow them around and maybe try to fight with them with, weapons or something. Which, all in all, that sounds cool. The idea that you could just put someone's mind into a state of utter, just, putty brain. But the coolest thing about Feeble Mind is that the spell lasts for 30 days. There's no concentration here. This is a spell that once you fail the save, you cannot repeat the save until 30 days have passed. And then you repeat the save. The intelligence saving throw, with your intelligence at 1, meaning that it is highly unlikely that you will ever get out of Feeble Mind with a saving throw. If you fail the first one, you're basically stuck. The only other thing that can get rid of the Feeble Mind effect is a Greater Restoration, a heal, or a wish spell. So this is the kind of thing I would whittle through a boss's legendary resistances just to try against them. Imagine turning an ancient dragon into a drooling lizard, or the evil wizard that's been masterminding the whole campaign into nothing more than an animal. Like, that's so powerful. And with no way to repeat the save, really, with any effectiveness, it's super strong. And it would be number 1 if the Druid didn't have one more wild-shaped trick up their sleeve. Because number 1 on this list, and I don't think this is a controversial take, is animal shapes. Animal shapes is kind of like the difference between a polymorph spell and wild shape, but put together into a supercharger. Animal shapes, when you cast it, you choose creatures within 30 feet of you, as many as you want, and you turn them into beasts of CR 4 or lower. There's not a whole lot that can do this, but you can do your standard bears or wolves. I think the giant scorpion is one of the strongest creatures you can turn into, which isn't that much when you're level 15. But that's actually not the power of this spell. The spell lasts for 24 hours, with concentration, unfortunately. But animal shapes allows you, as your action, so in a single turn, to transform all the creatures that are affected by animal shapes into different animal shapes. And the cool thing about it is that when they transform, their health goes back to the form, or back to the full amount of its new form. If a creature is knocked down to 0 hit points, they go back to their regular form, their human form, and the damage carries over. very similar to Polymorph and Wild Shape. However, because you're concentrating on the spell, you can just snap them back up with an action, and now all of a sudden they're in their animal form again. And you can change it at will. Turn into a bunch of spiders or rats, sneak in somewhere, then turn into a bunch of bears to tank a bunch of bosses or a bunch of guards, then turn into giant scorpions to fight the boss, and if someone goes down, you use your action, now they're back up again. This way, if you keep your concentration safe, you stay at the back, you can effectively turn a bunch of other creatures. It doesn't even have to be your party. It could be commoners, it could be hired mercenaries, it could be pets. You could buy a bag of rats or buy a bunch of dogs or cats and just transform them, and now they have super powerful forms. Again, they're not going to stand out immensely at level 15, but they basically can't die. As long as their hit points don't get dropped to 0 in their regular form, you can just keep giving them unlimited hit points for 24 hours, changing forms as need be. Like, this spell, truly, by a good planner and a good battlefield controller / maneuver, this makes you invincible. It truly does what Polymorph does, but better. The only thing is that you can't turn into super powerful monsters, but who cares? You can't be killed as long as you are handling your action economy right. And a smart druid really can't go wrong with this. It truly turns your party into an infinite source of hit points and an infinite source of combat power and an infinite source of utility, because any beast can be transformed into CR4 and down. So yeah, Animal Shapes takes the cake. It truly does. It's one of the best spells in the whole game. And for the Druid at 8th level spells, it's definitely the top tier. This has been the Relaxed Fantasy Review. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe down below, and keep your eyes peeled for more spellcasting reviews coming down the line soon. Have a good one, my friends.